Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our last webinar before Christmas. It's also the last webinar in this little mini series of 4. So if you've been kind enough to attend all 4 in the series, then you do now qualify to win a prize. We'll check the attendee list and draw a name out of a hat for those that have been on all 4 sessions. And that person will win a TS251D fully populated with 8TB WD hard drive. So pretty decent giveaway that, so be sure to look out for an email announcing the winner probably later this week. Last time out, Craig took us through our new enterprise desktop range in some depth, including looking at some interesting performance testing. As always, if you did miss that session or you haven't checked out our YouTube page yet, then all our webinars do get uploaded in full pretty much directly after the session. Alongside some shorter content that Craig puts out in between sessions, which can be really interesting, little 6-minute videos, maybe a new product or a new feature, something like that. So please do have a look and subscribe for us there. It's really appreciated. As for today, we're going to be looking at Plex and how to best configure it on your QNAP. Someone once told me that Plex is in the top 5 most downloaded apps from our App Center, so I'm sure this will provide a very popular session with loads of questions. Regarding the questions, if you can please chuck them in the chat window as they occur, that way we can respond whilst on topic and it keeps it nice and interesting for everybody. So I hope it's an enjoyable session, and if I don't speak to you again before, Merry Christmas. We will be back in the new year with more webinars, I'm sure. So Craig, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Okay, hi everyone. So today we're going to go through a couple of different things. We're going to go through the entire Plex setup. So since I factory reset this NAS, I have not installed Plex on it, so it will be a completely fresh install. All I've done is copy some content up so that Plex can find something so that I can take you through how to add libraries and some extra features. Some extra questions we did get was just regarding the QuMagie software, so our photo management software. So just before we go into Plex, I'll just cover that off a little bit. So I have pre-installed QuMagie simply because it's 3 components that I have to download. It takes a little while, and I don't think you want to see apps downloading for too long. I haven't done it with Plex because Plex installs really fast. It's a very small app. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up QuMagie just to illustrate that it's completely pretty much empty. There's just some sample photos that are in there from built into the NAS. I'll get rid of those in a minute, but it's very basic, very plain. Nothing has really been detected in there. So what I'll do is I'll come out, and now the brains behind QuMagie is the QuMagie core, which is the AI engine that powers everything such as object detection, facial recognition, things like that. All that's managed from within the multimedia console on the NAS. So an area you need to go to add content to it is in content management. So we've already defaulted to the QuMagie folder. If I edit the content sources, it automatically creates a folder called Multimedia. I, on purpose, have not put my content in there. So a lot of people might want to create their own folder structure, copy in their files before QuMagie is installed, which means that the multimedia folder would not be created yet. So I just created one called Photos. So I'm going to untick the multimedia folder, and I'm going to tick the Photos folder. So what it's going to do now is it's going to go off and scan that folder, and it's going to look for any content that's in there. If I click down to the thumbnail generation, it's now generating thumbnails for the select few images that I've put in there. Courtesy of my colleague Tam. So here it's just doing an index of all the files that are there. The thumbnail generation is happening. Now also in the back end, whilst it's generating the thumbnails, it's also doing the AI detection of what's in the folder. So we've got 3 sections here. It's looking for similar photos. It's looking for object recognition. So that would be your things. You know, is it food? Is it an animal? Is it a plant? You know, and then we've got subcategories within those, such as in animals there might be insects, dogs, whatever. It's going to find the different options you've got. It's already completed the similar photo recognition. Object recognition happens pretty quickly behind it. And then it's going to go off and try to recognize the faces of anybody in any of the pictures that I've got there. So as that's working away, in the background, we're pretty much able to go straight into QuMagie, and you can start adding tags if you want to. You can add the faces it's found. You can say this face is this person, and then going forward, anytime you add a photo of that person, it will automatically tag that person's face going forward. So all 3 sections are now completed. The thumbnail generation is completed. Again, I did not have a lot of files in there, so it wouldn't take very long. So now when I open up QuMagie, it should look quite different. So we'll just close the wizard down there. So now it's repopulated with a lot of different items. So here is just all photos, no real intelligence here, just a sidebar there where you can scroll down to different times and dates. The clever stuff all happens in the album section. So on the left-hand menu here, when we go to albums, we do have a few different options along the top with the detected items it's got across the list. So looking at this, you might think, why is it detected a bumblebee as people? But when I click into people, it's found faces actually on the image. If you ever come across a situation where it finds something like this picture of a flower where there is no faces, you can easily just remove that if you want to from the list. So you can just delete that photo from the section and it won't come up again. So you can tag it and then you can just delete it because there is no face. It doesn't actually delete the picture, it just removes it as a person detection. So if it ever does come up with a small error like that, you can find different items. If we go through the things, we've got a lot of subcategories. So in animal, we've got 5 photos, but specifically down in dogs and specifically a bulldog, it finds just the 1 photo. So whilst these sort of insects and bulldogs are also in the animal category, so if I pull that out, all the different animals that get detected, they all have their own subcategories as well. So there's food. So I haven't had to actually do any of that. All I've done is got a folder full of photos, put them in, and it's gone off and done that. And every time you add new photos, it automatically scans them and adds them to these smart albums. And you can then go off and create different items there as well. If your photos do have geotags, geolocations added to them, you can also come in here and you can see where they are. It will give you a text of where they were taken, or you can click onto the map view and the map view will show you an overlay of where they are. So if I was to zoom out of here so we can see where they all are taken. So here we've got one over in Las Vegas, we've got some in Switzerland, and we've got some in the UK. So when you start zooming through the different sections here, it will start splitting them out if the picture was taken somewhere else. So as we start getting in a bit closer, we can see that the UK ones are actually in 3 separate locations so that you can go and find the photos very easily between the different regions. So that's how it works with the geotagging and the geomap. So you can go and just look at these specific place names as well if you wanted to. Okay, so I see no questions so far with anything to do with QuMagie, so hopefully that's covered getting you up and running with QuMagie. It's very easy to do. The most common mistake is just not putting your photos in a folder that's set as the content source. So it's very easy to just go and edit the content source. The auto added one with the sample pictures that are on the NAS can be very easily removed so that it's not there. But yeah, very, very simple and very easy, very powerful software on your NAS to go through and change the settings and manage your photos. Okay, so now we'll get on to the main event, which is Plex. So to get started with Plex, it's a media server effectively. It's a very rich content media server. So instead of like some media servers that are out there, they're a bit basic. They might just do text displays of what's in your list or what it's being shared. So if you were to use the DLNA media server, for example, a bit more compatible with different things, it will ordinarily just show, here's a bunch of file names. There's no categorization, very little things like genres or anything like that done to split the content from each other. Plex is very, very feature rich, and it uses a lot of metadata so that you can focus and find different items within your library. Sorry, I just see some questions here about QuMagie before we get on. So somebody's asking here, what's the difference between QuMagie and QuMagie Core? So QuMagie is the app that does the display. It's the interface that you interact with. QuMagie Core is the backend that does all the AI detection. It's effectively run on a few containers in our container station. But that's the intelligence behind what makes the smart albums work, like the things, the objects, the facial recognition. I do see another question here saying, is 3 weeks on a TS351 reasonable with 100,000 images to tag and sort? No, I would say that's definitely not reasonable for 100,000 images to take that long. Is it 100,000 or 10,000? I'll have a talk with the product manager after the session for you there, Derek, and I'll see if there's anything we can do to get that sped up for you. Apple Live Photos supported. I will check. I know you can add them in. Whether the live feature or not works, I don't know. It's an Apple question, so they're sometimes quite restrictive in what they allow other people to use. But I will check on that for you and get back to you on that one, Dirk. And somebody here is saying, can we get QuMagie to alter tags on the images, please? I will feed that back and I will ask. I know you can add your own tags into it, so that's often what's recommended. But if you've already got tags added with something like Lightroom, I've tested that for a customer before. If you've already got a photo management software like Lightroom, if you import them across, the tags do come in and do get recognized within the QuMagie software as the ones that you've set. Okay. So right, we'll move straight on to Plex. So here are the default apps that I've got installed on the QNAP. Really, the only ones I've added in is the QuMagie and QuMagie Core, as well as Container Station. Everything else is installed as standard when you set up the QNAP. Just to give you a background of which QNAP this is, if I go look at the storage and snapshots, this is just a TVS-882. It's actually a 5-year-old one. It's one I used to use as my primary NAS, but it's still quite powerful, still quite good. So I use it for demos and things like that. If I go through the different disks and things we're using, so in this one, I've got a couple of 4 terabytes Seagate, Western Digital red SSDs. So there's some 4 terabyte ones there. They're working as an SSD cache. Down at the bottom here, I do have some PCIe NVMEs added to one of our QM2 cards. So again, these are the WD, I think these are the WD Black NVMEs that are there. So we've got 4 1 terabyte ones of those, and we've also got some WD Red Pro hard drives working as the big volume storage. So they're added and accelerated by the WD SSDs there as an SSD cache. So that's the main setup I've got there. I have created the main volume on the NVMEs, so that's where Plex is going to be installed and all the apps are going to be installed into. If you've got a very, very large Plex library, or especially a large QuMagie library, it's often very good to be putting the app itself into the SSD storage. So if NVMEs are not supported by your NAS, or you can't add one of our QM2 cards, SATA SSDs will also massively help, just simply because of the performance they give you when scanning data, no moving parts. It makes it much, much quicker. So to add the app, we'll go to the entertainment section here in the App Center. So your QNAP does have to be online for the App Center to work. It has to be on the internet, and obviously Plex needs it to download the metadata. So in the entertainment section, you'll see that Plex Media Server is there as an option to install. So simply tapping install gives you a little warning saying we do not make this app. Just to give you a bit of a warning that it's not made by us. We have checked it, but you can add it if you want to. Go, yes, I agree. Now here's where you get the choice of where to install the apps. If you've got multiple storage pools on different sets of disks, you can install it. So the large volume I've got here is on the hard drives, and down here I've got the SSD volume. So I'm going to tick the SSD volume. So that's where we're going to install it, and that's where all my other apps are added into. So we'll just click OK on that one. The first step is it will download it. As I said earlier, Plex is quite a small app, so it downloads pretty quick, and it's one of the fastest installing apps out there as well. So it usually only takes about 5 seconds to install and start running the service as well. Just a couple extra questions where that's happening. After facial recognition of the images, can you sort them out into different folders? Yes, you can. You can sort out any item into any separate folders. You can create your own smart albums based on the different criteria. So if you want to, you can create an album that's got faces of people next to objects that you might select as trees, let's say. So if you want to see every picture of somebody next to a tree, you can create a new smart album. It doesn't duplicate the images, the storage is the same, it's just created you a new smart album based off different criteria. So it's very cool for doing that, and you can add lots and lots of criteria for each album. So you could say, I want every picture of somebody with a picture with a face in it next to a tree in a certain date range if you wanted to. So it's quite powerful for creating custom albums. One of my favorite features for my setup is I can pick every photo taken on a certain date, but not put the year in. So for example, my daughter's birthday, I can go back and look at every picture taken on my daughter's birthdays, and then you get the pictures throughout the years and you see all the birthday parties she had, so you can see over time just how she's grown. So I find that a really cool feature, that you can go through and see everything from a specific date and not add the year into the feature as well. Okay, so that's done now. So if I go back to my apps, we should see that the Plex Media Server is added in. So it's automatically added it to the desktop as well. So if I click on this, it's going to open up a new browser window. which is effectively a web server running on a different port, which is basically Plex. So this is Plex now running within the NAS. The IP address is the same, so it's not hosted somewhere else. If I go back to the NAS, 50.30 is the IP of the NAS, and 50.30 is just on a different port for Plex. Somebody else was asking a question here. After installing Plex Media Server, where can I see that it's installed? You generally wouldn't need to know, but if you ever did want to go in and do it, the best place to check is our forums. Depending on the NAS, whether you're using QTS or QUTS Hero, it will be a different place. To access it, you're pretty much going to have to go through the command line to access where it's installed. It's basically installed in the system of the NAS in the back end. You can browse to it. Sometimes, especially if you're switching from one NAS to another NAS and you want to copy your library and your watch history from one QNAP to another, it is handy to be able to do it. But I find either the QNAP forums or the Plex forums are the best place. It sort of gives you commands you can copy and paste, where you can copy the working data of Plex to a more visible folder, so you can actually copy it off the NAS, and then it tells you how to copy it back to your new NAS if you want to keep up and running on a new NAS. So a lot of people do that. They might like Plex and decide they need a bigger NAS, something more powerful, something better for transcoding. So we've got different options there if you want to transfer everything from one NAS to another NAS. Okay, so we'll click got it. So now this is the basic server setup. It's just copied the name off what I've called the NAS, so I'll leave that the same. You can allow it to access media outside my home. I'm going to disable that personally. It is literally a tick box. This is whether or not you want Plex to ask your router for permission to open up a port with UPnP. I'm going to disable that simply because I don't have UPnP running on my router, so it would fail. I'd have to open up a port manually anyway. So we're going to click next. Now you want to add your libraries. So I'm going to add one library initially with the wizard, and then I'll come back and I'll add another library next so that you can see the steps of how you would add different libraries for different content as well. So the first thing we're going to do is add a library, and this is where you have to tell Plex the content. Now this is important so that it can scan the metadata correctly. So the first one I'm going to add is films. So when I add films, you can name it whatever you want. Maybe you want to call it movies instead, so you can change that. You can pick the specific language that you want things done for. This is for things like movie ratings, the reviews that pop up in there. That will all make sense why you've got to pick the language in a moment. Now, the next step is to add the folders. Now, browsing for the media folder, this is the bit that might look a little bit alien for some people, because this is effectively the folders in the back end of the NAS that you wouldn't normally see on a QNAP by browsing the file station or the network shares. So we've got to effectively find the network shares because that's where my content is. Now on QTS, this is going to be in a folder that's right there called cache dev1 data. So in cache dev1 data, you're now going to start seeing things that look very familiar because these are the shares that you've created. So I'm going to scroll down to the movies folder because that's where I put them. We can see the different movies that I've got added there, and I'm going to click add. So it's effectively just added that full set of paths there so that I can see directly where the movies are. The next option is advanced. So in advanced, this is where you can set things like the certification country. So this would be the movie ratings, whether it's a 15 here, or in America they have R-rated, or whatever the different options are. This is just to pick which certifications things are done. You can enable things like cinema trailers and some other things as well. As we scroll down the list, the one I go to is right at the bottom. So down here, you've got your scanner and your agent. Now, Plex has decided to start doing their own scanners and agents, and their scanner is pretty good. The scanner is what's going to look at your file names to know what it has to search for, where it's going to pull that data from. Again, that will become a bit clearer once it's done the scan. But the agent, I find that changing it to the movie database is a much more complete database. So if you download a movie, maybe it's a not an English-based movie, maybe it's something very specific in a different language. I find that the Plex movie database isn't as complete as the actual movie database that's out there. The movie database is a bit like IMDb. So I always change the agent for movies down to the movie database. So I'm going to click add library. So there's the films one. I could add another one right now for, say, TV shows, but I'll do that manually a bit later on just so you can see how you would add it after the fact, after the initial wizard is finished. So we're going to click next. It's telling you can go get the apps now if you want them for your smart TV, your mobile devices, other things like that, and we'll click done. These are your pinned sources. So these are the items that are going to appear in the left menu bar, your quick navigation. For this demo, I'm not going to be doing music, podcasts, news, web shows, movies and shows. So this is all sort of built-in Plex content that they'll show you, streaming media. I'm just going to leave the films on, which is the one that I just added. So if I click finish there, we can see that we've now got the recently added movies, and my pinned sources right now are just films. If you ever want to access the other ones, they are there in the background, but the ones pinned on the home screen are right there. So if I just make that a little bit smaller, we can see all the different movies that have been added and scanned. Now, I did not add any of this content. These movie posters and things like that, I did not add those. If I go back and show you what the movies folder looks like that I added as a content source, it is just, these are small trailer files, but these are just plain simple files that I've got there with the name. So I've named them carefully. So I've made sure I've called the film exactly what it's called. And just for a little bit of extra protection, I've also, as a good practice, I've put the year that the movie was released there. This is quite important because if you have a movie and you just call it something like The Italian Job, if you just do The Italian Job, there's every chance that the match might be made to the one with Mark Wahlberg in it. You know, you don't want to watch that one. It's not very good. You want to watch the one with Michael Caine in it. So if you want to find the correct one, you might have to put The Italian Job 1969. Then it's going to have two things to search for: the name of the movie as well as the year the movie was released. So that's why I would always recommend to put the year in. Sometimes you might be okay with not putting the year. The one that's sort of confused Plex right now is the Batman 2022. There's obviously quite a lot of Batman ones. So when I look at the Batman 2022, it's not detected it correctly. So there's a way to fix that. If it hasn't ever detected a movie correctly, you can click these three little dots here and you can click on the match option. Now, when you go to the search options here, we can see that it's effectively scraped the file name and put it in, but the website has not found what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the 2022 from there, and I'm going to put it down here. So now I've done that, I'm going to tell it to search, and it's now going to come back with some different options. So this is why it was getting confused. There was two options, you know, the Lego Batman movie, it's coming out in 2022 as well. So that's how sometimes you can see some different mixes there. So here, if we go to the Batman, it's now going to refresh and update the information for that one that did not detect correctly. So there we go. We've now got the movie poster. It's downloaded it correctly. Now, when you click into these movies, you can see a lot more content on them. You've got different views as well. So this is just recently added movies. If you've got a lot of content sources, you might want to click in. So when I go into films, you see some recommended options, or you can just purely view your library with no recommendations. So here is the full list. Anything with this orange tab at the top means you've not watched it yet. If you ever want to mark something as played, you can do that just by ticking the box here, or you can go into the menu and you can mark it as played. So that will get rid of the orange tab that's there at the top. One other thing I'm going to do just quickly, because it takes some time in the background, is for part of this demo, I do want to show the TV tuner side of things. So I'm just going to add it. It's just the TV guide does take a while to sync. So if you want to see it in action, I'm going to set that up now. So I'm going to set up in the live TV and DVR menu down at the left-hand side. I do have a TV tuner here on my network. It's a network-based TV tuner. It's got two DVB-T tuners in it. It's on my network. There's no passwords or anything for it. It just connects. It's found the tuner. I'm going to click continue. It's detected some channels from my tuner straight away. It does want to know what country I'm in. So if I scroll right down and say UK and click continue, it needs the postcode. So if you have regional programming, it picks up the different ones. So I'll put the first part of the postcode in and click next. So that's now going to build a database for the channels and location I'm in, and then it's going to go and download the program data. So here you can fine tune the channels. You know, maybe you don't want the standard definition channels. Maybe you want to untick those and replace them with the HD version of the channel. So here, BBC One South, if I wanted it to be the HD version, I think that's down on 100. I could change that to BBC One HD 101 there if I wanted to as well. So you can change them around if you really want to. I'm just going to continue with the default settings, and it's now going to go off and initialize and scan for that guide. It will take a little while to do that. The first time it downloads the TV guide and builds it, it does take a few minutes. So I'm just setting that off right now, and we'll come back to the TV setup, the DVR setup, the recording, the pausing live TV, the scheduling. So we'll leave that running in the background with this spinny progress meter there. So if we go back to the main section here with the films. Now, if you ever don't like one of the movie posters that's created there, you can change it. So for example, with one of these Avengers ones, if you click the little edit pencil icon that's there, there's a lot of different options that you can change. So you can adjust the rating yourself if you want to. But here we've got the posters. So it's come up with lots of different posters that the movie database hosted. So you can come down and you can change the posters to anything else. So maybe you wanted a nice picture of Thanos there. So there we go. We can change what the movie poster looks like so that you can change them however you want to. I just have a few questions here from people to answer. Will Plex locate .iso images for DVD and Blu-ray? And will it work? Sorry, it's a long question. Let me just expand that. And will it work with MPEG-2 and H.264 encoding? Regarding MPEG-2 and H.264, no problem whatsoever. For ISOs and DVDs and Blu-rays, I find that it doesn't work so great. There are some plugins you can do, but generally, I don't use the ISO file options for it. Things like the menus and things don't translate well, so I generally would not recommend using ISOs. If you can encode them into a file, I think it would work much better. So let's have a look. How does Plex compare to using a client-based HTPC, so a home theater PC application such as Kodi, which has similar features to that shown with Plex? Well, Plex originally started, I think, as a branch from Kodi, which used to be called XBMC, the Xbox Media Center. So it's quite similar. Plex is definitely a lot easier to use and to set up. There's a lot less complexity with it. I find sometimes the downside with Kodi is that you've got to run effectively the player and server interface together. And see on the NAS here, you might not be wanting to hook up the NAS with HDMI to a screen for management. So I like Plex because it runs as a server and there's a separate application that you can install for playing it on your smart TVs, your other devices. So I often find Plex is a bit easier to use for that. It's definitely a lot simpler with the interface, but there's a lot more customizations with Kodi. So it just depends what you need to use. Somebody else is asking, is the tuner need an aerial for a TV antenna, or is it connected to the internet? So for my particular one, it's an aerial. So I have an aerial on the roof. My TV tuner is actually in my loft, in my attic. So I've got up there an Ethernet connection into it. I've got a power connection and a TV antenna connection into it. And that allows me to tune 2 separate channels, so I can record one while watching another. They do bigger boxes as well that do 4 channels as well, so it's got 4 tuners in there. So you've got different options that you can do with that. Somebody's asking, is it possible to add movie folders that are on different NAS systems? I assume you need to add the shares first to the folders on the NAS where Plex is installed. Honestly, never tried it. I think you could do it with our hybrid mount feature where you mount the other share from the other location into your Plex. But in that case, I would probably recommend just running 2 Plex servers. So you can have a Plex server running on your other NAS, let's say, and a Plex server running on this NAS, and you can join them together into a single view. So you can browse the content on both if you want to as well. Somebody's saying here that Safari blocks access to the web server on your specific IP address. How do you solve? I think that would be possibly, you maybe have a blocker within Safari, a content filter, a piece of software that's some security that would be blocking that. The NAS won't block you access to the share, so I don't know why you're getting blocked on that specific folder. Somebody saying install Plex and it recommended not using the multimedia folder. So you have done the same. Is there a reason for this? The main reason is that the built-in QNAP software is going to be scanning for content in that folder as well as Plex, because Plex has nothing to do with the multimedia console in the QNAP. So for me personally, I don't use the multimedia folder simply because every say movie or TV show that I add in, I don't want it to be scanned by the built-in multimedia console on the QNAP. It's just doubling up the work for my NAS every time new files are added, and I'm not really going to be watching any of my content that I'm adding for Plex in anything but Plex, so I don't need it to be doing that work in the background. So that's why I've set it up separately. Somebody here asking, does Plex support DVB-S, so satellites and Freeview? Absolutely, Plex doesn't really matter what the input source is. The only thing Plex cares about is it compatible with that tuner? So the people I'm using is Silicon Dust HD Home Run. They don't have a satellite version that works in the UK or Europe for what I understand. They do have one for the American market that works with satellites such as Dish Network over there, but they haven't localized one that works with the European signals. So if you can find a TV tuner that's supported by Plex that works with satellite as well as sort of terrestrial antennas, yes, it will work. All Plex wants to know is that there is a network feed that it can take from a TV tuner. It doesn't matter what the feed is at the other side, that's taken care of by the tuner. It doesn't matter whether it's a satellite or not. Somebody's asking, what is the make model of the TV box? So I think I'm using the HD Home Run. It's made by Silicon Dust, and mine's called, I think, the Connect Duo. Make sure you pick the one for your region. Obviously, the signals for, say, America, where they're based, is different from the ones in Europe. So they do have a shop that has the different ones on there. Another one, I have a QNAP TS653 and running Plex Media Server, and on HD station, the Plex player, all connected to a 4K Denon receiver with a HDMI cable. Why are my 4K movies not playing good? Sound is okay, but video is stuttering and has gray blinks. Simply because the 653 probably is not supporting or does not have enough processing power to convert the file from the 4K or to transcode the file in real time. So that's probably what's happening there. It sounds like something in the link there is not working with 4K, so it might be that the encoding does not match the supported 4K for the 653. For me personally, I don't play using HD Station. I have an NVIDIA Shield in my living room that has Plex installed on it. It plays absolutely every file natively. So when I play a file from my NVIDIA Shield, it's always direct played. It never has to convert anything. So even when playing a 4K file, the CPU usage on my NAS only goes up by about 5% because it's just a file transfer at the end of the day. Plex isn't actually having to convert it. Somebody here is asking, for music, what agents to use to get album art? So effectively, it's the same option when you're adding a library for music. But yeah, the album art is not so good on music, I would say. The library that it can access is not fantastic. So quite often what you might have to do is go download the image of the album art and then upload the file into Plex. It's very easy to do through the interface. I haven't done music on this this setup. I've only got movies and TV shows to do, so I can't demo it, unfortunately. Somebody else is asking how you can select different sound options of a movie, like DTS. Can you change it by movie, or is it a default setting? Yes, by movie. So when you're in a movie, so none of these trailers have multiple options, for example. So if I was to click into the Avengers option, we can see here that it just says English AC3 5.1. If this file was available, a more feature-rich file that wasn't a trailer, you would have a drop-down, a bit like the subtitles drop-down where it says none. There's a drop-down there, so some of the different content might say English AC3 5.1. You might have a 7.1 True HD drop-down, Atmos surround. If you've got multiple files, so if you've got a 4K version and a 1080p version of the same file, you'll get the same drop-down next to video. So when you go to start playing the movie, you can pick the specs of the movie before you click play, and you can choose from the choices which one it will be. So somebody else is saying, if I want to share with others, is it better to use Plex, or do I set up users and shared folders through QNAP? So the way Plex wants to do it, if you want them to have the feature-rich experience within Plex, is they will have to go get their own Plex account. It's completely free to do that, and you can then share from your own library here to them if you want to. So there is an option here where you can go to users and sharing so that you can share your content with their Plex account. But when you share to an email address, and their email address must be registered with Plex for them to gain access to content on your server. I'll do one more question before we switch across to covering off some more options. So can you compare Twonky to Plex? Any significant advantages or disadvantages of either? So Twonky is just a bit more basic to Plex. I find Plex a lot easier to use than Twonky. I find that the server side is a lot more capable with the transcoding options. So that's the different options we've got there. One of the users here has actually answered somebody else's question. So if you're looking for a satellite TV tuner that works with Plex, somebody's saying there is a company called Black Gold for satellite TV tuners that should work. So I haven't verified that. That's just what somebody else has said. Okay, another good question from Gio there. When does the free part of Plex stop? For instance, when sharing or streaming to mobile. So right now, what I'm showing you, apart from adding the TV tuner, everything is included with the free Plex. So basic Plex is everything there. Things like sharing are completely free as well, as far as I'm aware. The Plex Pass is needed for some advanced features, especially within the music. If you want the Premiere Music and better photo scanning, they will want the different options. But if you go to the Plex website, they will tell you with their Go Premium option what you will gain by switching across to the Premium Plex Pass. The Plex Pass is not too bad a price. I've got a lifetime membership on my personal Plex server. I think that was about £40 a couple of years ago, so I never have to pay again. But I think the membership's only about $2.99 or $3.99 a month if you want to just have a play with the advanced features. But it's really powerful software even when it's free. So now I've clicked into one of the movies here. So if I scroll down the movie, it's got all the faces of the people that are in it. So again, I didn't add these. As you saw, all I have is file names named correctly, and it's pulled down all of this information. I can give items my own rating as well here with the star rating at the top. And you've got different categories. Now everything's clickable, and it's clickable for a reason. It means that you can sort the content by that item. So for example, if I was to click on Robert Downey Jr.'s face, it's going to show me every movie in my library with Robert Downey Jr. in it. So you can sort through with a lot of different customizations, genres, different things like that. So if I go back to the main list, if I was to click into the Batman, for example, we've got all the different options, action, crime. So if I want to see every action movie I got, I can just click on action and it pulls up a list of just the action movies. So it's very powerful at going through all the different options that you have. It's such a rich experience to sort through and look at the different items. Even when you click into a movie, so by default, it's sort of just a gray background. If you want it to look a little fancier, you can click show artwork and it fades that in from the background. So you can see a bit more stuff behind, nice view of Wakanda there in the background. So you can see a lot of different options. And because it's Christmas, in the films list I've got there, I added an Elf trailer as well. So when Elf's there, you see all the different information. You've got all the different people that are in the different items. As you scroll down, it does do recommendations for, say, soundtracks, different items like that. There might be a related movie. This was the only Christmas movie, so it's not related. Any extra ones down at the bottom. But that's the sort of the feature-rich side of Plex that you get. And again, I didn't add any movie posters. I didn't say who was in the movies. Plex has effectively gone off and searched the file name and the year to go off and find this value-add content, if you like, this feature-rich content that's been added into each of the different files there. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to add an extra library here on the left. Now, one of the settings I like to turn on is when you're in the main Plex settings here, and there is an option within the library settings to turn on scan my library automatically. So I like to turn that on so that instead of on a periodic time, let's say I add a new movie, I don't want to have to wait to every hour on the hour that it scans for new files to add them into my library. So I say scan my library automatically, and then I save those changes. So what I'm going to do now is in the library section down at the bottom where you can manage your libraries, I'm going to add a library, but this time I'm going to add TV shows. So you can call it TV programs, TV shows, you can rename it, whatever you want. I'm going to add folders. I'm going to browse for the media folder. And as I said earlier, cache dev 1 data is where you need to be. And I've created a TV shows folder. Now in here, I've got a file that's literally just exported from my CCTV. And just to illustrate that Plex isn't scanning the actual file itself to find out what the movie is. It's just done by the file name. So I'm going to add that library in. So now we've got the TV show section that's added in. It's scanning the folder, but it won't find anything because I haven't created anything for it to scan for metadata there. So here in the sections here, we've now got a TV show section that I add. I'm going to pin that so it's back on my main screen. So now I've got the TV show section. Because I added live TV and DVR, I'll pin that. I won't click in yet because I see it still spinning, scanning for the TV content. You can check the progress of it there. So it's downloading the guide data. It looks like it's about 3/4 there, so we should be able to see that in a moment. So in TV shows, the library is currently empty. So if I go check my TV shows in the back end of the NAS, so if I click onto TV shows, we can see I've got a cctv.mp4 file. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure the TV shows in a way that makes sense for Plex to scan them. So the first thing with TV shows, it's a little different from the movies. So the first thing is I'm going to say, let's say this is Friends. Now, as with the movies, it's important to put the year again. So I'm going to put Friends 1994. Again, if I go back to Plex, it won't scan anything. There's nothing there to show because that folder Friends, although it knows the TV show Friends is there now because I've added it, it's not got any content within it, so it won't display it. So the next step I'm going to do is in the Friends folder, I'm going to then create a multi-season structure within here because lots of TV shows have more than one season. So I call these season space 01. So now we've got season 1. So if I go back to the main root of the folder, I see the CCTV folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that file. So copy, move to, and I'm going to move it within that folder. So that season 1 folder that I have there. So that's going to move that CCTV file that I've got across into that folder. Now again, if I go back to Plex, it still won't find anything because that file, CCTV, there was no episode of Friends called CCTV, so it doesn't know what to find to go scan for that file. Now, you don't have to know what the name of the episode's called, you just have to know the number of the episodes. So if I was to rename this file, and I'm going to call this one Friends, Season 1, Episode 1, so S01E01, and then I'm going to just save that. So now I've actually put something in there that it's going to be able to scan and find. And judging by the name of the folder, Friends 1994, it knows the parent of the item and that it's in a season 1 folder, which makes organization of multiple seasons work much better. And now I've named the episodes within the folder with the appropriate episode numbers. It knows what each one's going to be. So without me doing anything, it's already now added something in there. So if I just click off and back, we should see posters. There we go. So now we see posters. I'll click to the library rather than the recommended view. So here in library, we see Friends 1 season. We'll click into it. There's the Friends. It gives you a nice little synopsis about what Friends as a show is. You can then click into season 1. Gives you everything that would be in season 1. It even has the episode name that's there. So the one where Monica gets a roommate. And as you click in, you actually get information about what's happening in that specific episode. Now, just to prove this isn't Friends, if I click play on this item, it is literally a CCTV image of a bird throwing moss off my roof. So let me just mute that. So that's what the Plex isn't looking at the file to show any information about what the file actually is. It's purely using the file names. So it's very important with Plex that you set up your file names correctly and the structures correctly so that it can determine what it's looking for. And there's no point putting a movie into a folder that's looking for TV shows because the TV database doesn't know about movies and vice versa. The movie database doesn't know about TV shows. So that's why you've got to split your content into separate sections. Let's just go back to a couple more questions before we do the TV guide things. So somebody's saying here, if I share my library with another Plex user, will it slow down if we are watching at the same time? It depends on how much transcoding's done, how powerful your NAS is, things like that. Usually when you're local with your Plex, no transcoding has to take place. Usually natively local, you're going to be able to play the file straight away. It puts very little demand on the NAS. So it just depends on which NAS you go for. There's a couple of great videos out there by some YouTubers that show our new NAS, the TVS H1288X, doing very many simultaneous streams at once. So if you are planning to share it with a lot of people, make sure you get a NAS size that's got enough power to do enough transcoding for the amount of people that you want to watch simultaneously. Somebody here saying, can you show the hookup option? I like to use Plex in combination with my home automation. It's hard to understand. Not sure what you mean there, Jerome. I'll come back to you after the session to see what you mean, and maybe I'll give you more information after that. Let's have a look. You spoke about NVIDIA Shield. Is that an easy device to connect to a QNAP with Plex Media Server installed? Do you have to have a lot of IT knowledge? No, it's very easy. The NVIDIA Shield is literally like an Android telephone, but with a simpler interface. It runs Android TV. It's got access to the Google Play Store. You just go into the Play Store and you download the Plex Media Player app. It finds your Plex on the network. You can authorize it with just a 4-digit code. You don't even have to type your passwords on screen. It's very simple and easy to do to connect an NVIDIA Shield to your Plex Media Server. Somebody else has asked here, how do you handle home movies, so not films or TV shows? So they would simply be just added as an extra library. So if I was to show that here, go to Manage Libraries, adding a library. You do have a section here for just other videos. In other videos, there's no real advanced stuff in there. You know, it's not scanning the metadata for the files. It will literally organize them by the folder structure you create. So I would add a folder for, say, my home videos, and I would just have to organize that folder separately. So within my home videos folder, I might say, you know, I went to Spain on holiday in 2005, and everything in that 2005 folder is my Spain holiday. You know, that's how I would organize my standard items that are not metadata. Things like IMDb are not going to have an entry for your holiday in Spain in 2005. So you've got to just add those manually, and it just shows you thumbnails of what each item is. You can do slideshows. You can do slideshows with music attached if you've got music added into your Plex as well. So very easy to do. Somebody saying off topic, your NVIDIA Shield has a Plex server. Would that not conflict with the QNAP server installation? Well, you can install the Plex server on an NVIDIA Shield. There is no storage really on an NVIDIA Shield, so you'd have to add a USB hard drive. For me, I just didn't install the Plex server on my NVIDIA Shield, but you can add it. You can have it on the same PlexPass account. Multiple Plex servers don't conflict. They actually work together so that you can see all your content from multiple devices in one place. So Plex handles it very nicely. Somebody's asking, what is your advice? Plex Media Server on the NAS or Plex Media Server on a Shield? I would advise it on the NAS. The NAS is on absolutely permanently. It's probably got a stronger transcode mechanism, especially on the more powerful ones for multiple users at the same time. But it's entirely up to you. You can use it in both locations. You can have the files on a QNAP connected into sort of a share path, if you like, into Plex if you wanted to as well. Okay, so it looks like the TV stuff has finished scanning here. So if I go back to home, we'll go back to the live TV and DVR section. So the first view it gives you is what's on, pretty unfamiliar. I'm personally not a fan of this view, but the one that I like is the guide option that's at the top. So when you click on guide, you see something that looks a lot more familiar with how a standard TV guide on a normal DVR system would be done. So in here, you've got lots of options on each item. You can click play, you can click record. If I scroll down to this sort of 100 level, we'll start seeing the HD channels. So we see some different options. We've got BBC News there on BBC Two. So if I was to click play on that, that's going to open up the BBC News. Now, this isn't done through the BBC iPlayer. It's not streaming this from an internet source or anything like that. This is playing directly from my TV tuner. So my TV tuner is encoding this directly from the radio signal coming in to my antenna. It's then being fed to the Plex over the network, the Plex server, and now Plex is now letting me view it. Now, because the Plex has a lot of storage attached to it, it's installed in my NAS, I can do things like pause it. So I can now pause live TV. If I want to as well, just click play, it starts up again. I can actually record it so that it's going to save it to my Plex library. So you can say, I want to record this episode, and it will add it to a certain library. So TV shows is what makes the most sense. In the advanced settings, you can choose to have prefer HD. So even if you hit record on a non-HD version of the channel, it will automatically record it on the HD version instead. You can choose how early or how late it records after channels, different options. And one of the best features of Plex is it can detect commercials, so adverts. So you can detect and delete the commercials so that it saves space on your recordings, and when you play them back, you don't have to deal with them. Or you can choose options for skipping, where you can automatically click a button if you don't want to watch the commercials, and it will skip the 3 minutes ahead. So there's a lot of options that you can do there. So I'll click record on that. Now, as we've been watching this channel for a little bit, if I wanted to, I can go back in time. So I can just click rewind, so we can go back to when we started tuning into this channel. So there's a lot of options that you can do to go back and forward, just like a normal DVR. So this is a really cool feature by Plex to be able to, if you like, cut the cord for different subscription services. And one of the best things is your Plex server doesn't care where you are. So for example, with this BBC iPlayer software, let me just stop this, it's maybe causing the stream to be a bit choppy. With the Plex Media Server, it doesn't care where you are. So iPlayer would want you to be, let's say, in a compatible country. So if I watch iPlayer in the UK, there's no adverts. I can do offline syncing to my mobile devices, things like that. But if I'm, say, in a different country, like if I go to the Republic of Ireland, for example, the offline downloads don't work on iPlayer in the Republic of Ireland. You cannot watch it without ads. There is ads when you watch it in a country that does not pay the BBC TV license. So there's a lot of different options there. So it's fantastic when you're in a location where you wouldn't be able to get access to your favorite channels. And of course, all your programming is recorded, and you can set series links on things as well, so that it picks up every mention of that different option. And you can go through and see your different schedule of items that you've got. So it tells you your upcoming views and different items that you've got. It's quite powerful. And you can access this from all your devices as well. So if you've got the app installed on your mobile phone, your iPad, something like that, you can access the live TV and DVR features directly from that as well. And all the recorded content simply goes into your TV shows library. So it will just get added over here when the program has been recorded, so that you can go and access it as well. So it's very powerful software for doing different items like that. If you ever want to download the latest version of the app, you can always come here to the activity section. It says there's a server update available, and this download now button will download it directly from the Plex website. If we go there, if you want to download it manually, you can go to plex.tv, and there is a download section that you can go to in here. So in the My Account section, downloads, there is different options that you can have. So it asks for the different options. So here we've got a QNAP section in the download section for the Plex Media Server, and you can choose to download it. So the versions that they put on their website for Plex Pass downloads are much newer than the ones in the App Center. So if you want to keep up to date with all the very latest Plex features, it's often good to download this package. Once you've downloaded this Q package, to install it on your NAS, you simply come back to your NAS, go to the App Center, and click the plus button at the top to install manually, and you just browse to the local file that you've downloaded to your local machine, and it installs it. The installation time for the Plex app is usually less than about 20 seconds. It's a very small app, very low usage, very quick to install and get set up. So that's very easy to add different items in there. Okay, so that's covered off pretty much everything I wanted to show within there. So I'll just go look at the questions again. Thanks a lot for attending. Anybody that needs to nip off straight away. I know it's run a bit long, but I will go through the different questions here. And thanks a lot for attending this 4-part series. And somebody will be in touch with one of you to win that TS251D with 2 8TB WD drives in there as well. So I'm just going to carry on with some questions here and possibly show some other things if I can explain it better by showing. So somebody's saying, what is the best QNAP NAS at the moment for Plex Media Server and 4K Play? Well, if you go look at the NAS Compares video, he did a very thorough test of the TVS-H1288X. It's got a Xeon W CPU, onboard GPU as well, so hardware transcoding, things like that. Absolutely magnificent video there. Shows it off in a great light there, showing that one. So that one, if you need a bigger one, we do the TVS-H1688X as well. Is there a chance to see the 4 webinars again, or can I download as a movie so I can watch it again? Yes, Bernardo, if you go to our YouTube channel, all the webinars are up there for this series of 4, as well as the previous series that we've done. And as Tom mentioned, there's a lot of other little videos that we put out in between webinars up there for different topics that might not be needing a full session like this to talk about. 6 to 12 minutes is usually the average for those videos. Somebody here asking, can you reiterate why you use the root movies TV show folders and not the multimedia folder? Less CPU load. So the reason I'm doing that is because the default folder, as I showed at the start with QuMagie, the default folder in multimedia console for the content management is it auto selects the multimedia folder, and some people may want to use that default folder for the QuMagie photos and things like that. So as QuMagie is not doing movies, TV shows, it's just for photos and sort of home videos, things like that. It's not going to come up here in the multimedia. So I do it on separate folders just so that this indexing isn't taking place. So every time this is indexing or trying to work out the AI on some content that you've added, Plex is also trying to index that content as well and pull down the movie posters, the information of what actors is in it, the ratings. So every time I add it, I don't want the task duplicated on my NAS because I am not using QuMagie to watch my movies, and I don't add the photos into Plex because I find QuMagie much better at managing the photos than Plex, so that's why I keep them in separate apps. Is there a table somewhere which allows one to calculate which device is suitable for a particular scenario? For example, 2 simultaneous users watching 4K content? Unfortunately not. There isn't a table, Nicholas. It's simply because there's a lot of variables in there. If you were both watching 4K content on NVIDIA Shields across the LAN, you could go with a very basic NAS because there's very little demand placed on the QNAP for that. If you start trying to watch 4K content but at a lower resolution, such as on a 1080p TV, then you're going to need a very powerful NAS because it's not easy to convert that 4K file down to a 1080p. It takes a lot of power to do that, so you're going to need a quite powerful QNAP to do that. So it just depends on the scenario. Can you connect your cable modem from your provider as a TV tuner? It depends on your cable provider and whether Plex supports it. So that would probably be a question to go look at the Plex forums for, to see if your TV tuner specifically, your cable device is compatible with Plex. If it is, it should work. Some cable providers might not make everything free to air, and you might need a subscription card. So you'd have to find a mechanism to do the subscription card. I often find that gets quite complicated, so I stay away from it though. So somebody's here saying Plex on mine seems to be constantly running CPU processes. Is there a way to reduce CPU overload? I guess it depends on what you're using Plex for. If you've got it constantly scanning, maybe you can tell it to not scan your library automatically. You can run it on a schedule. That will be one thing. Obviously, Plex will run CPU resources occasionally, such as with the TV guide. Once every 24 hours, it refreshes the TV guide. Once an hour, if you set it, it will scan your library for new content. And obviously, if anybody starts playing anything, it will use some power as well. Somebody else is asking here, so you will only get Freeview and not CNN, for example. As far as I know, Plex will only work with the free-to-air channels. It just depends on your box. If you've got a TV tuner box that allows you to add a subscriber mechanism to it, so for example, here in the UK with Sky TV, they have a little credit card type thing that goes into the TV tuner box. So you would need a TV tuner that Plex works with that can take that card to access anything that's not free to air. Somebody saying, I recently flattened my NAS and reinstalled Plex, but the delete feature has disappeared off the TV. Is this a rights issue? If it's a feature that's missing from within the Plex interface, that's a question for Plex. It's their software. We don't control it. We can just run it. So if they've decided to remove the delete feature off the TV app that they do, that's a question for them. Will the QNAP NAS pick up an old USB HOPAG TV tuner? It's not for the QNAP NAS to pick it up. It's actually, the QNAP has no idea the TV tuner is connected. It's actually added within the Plex interface. So it's not whether or not the TV tuner is compatible with the QNAP, it's whether or not it's compatible with Plex. So I find the network TV tuners are the simplest to use. But that's the one I'm using. As I say, I'm using the Silicon Dust. It's the HD Home Run Connect Duo is the one I'm using. I don't think they make this one anymore. I've had this for a few years. I think they've got a much more modern looking, better version now. But yeah, that's what I'm currently using. So it says here, there's two tuners. One's in use because I'm recording BBC News in the background. So it gives you a fair bit of information about it there. Do the webinars include all the questions posed? Yes, I believe they do. I don't think we cut them off at the end. I think the whole video gets uploaded. Okay. Plex has a DLNA server if you have a client without Plex. That's right. So if you do have a smart TV, good point, Mike. If you do have a TV that does not have the ability to install the Plex Media Server, you can come here and enable the DLNA server if you want to. It will pretty much just show a basic list of files. Gives you a little bit more than just a basic media server. I think you can do a little bit by genre in there, but it will give you a more compatible interface if you want to enable that as well. So Gio is just pointing out that NAS Compares has a link for the best graphics cards for 4K Plex video transcoding. So if you Googled NAS Compares best graphics cards for GPU, you should find the link he's referring to there. Okay, so just one last thing I'll cover off is just the transcoder. So if your NAS has a GPU built into it, so a lot of our Intel based NAS, for example, they have onboard Intel graphics. So with those, you can tick the box here to use hardware acceleration when available. So that's not really going to use your CPU to do the transcoding. So if you are converting files from say 1080p down to 720p, it will use the onboard graphics to do it. So it won't even use your CPU to do the transcode for the first few users wanting to do transcodes. So you can set limits. So if you find that your NAS is getting a bit overloaded because 10 people are trying to watch content simultaneously, but your NAS only works with 8, you can restrict it to a set number of people. And you can also choose some of the amusing options they've got there for the transcoder quality. The bottom option there for make my CPU hurt, use with caution. It will put the Plex transcoding task at the very top of the queue over every other task on the QNAP. So even things like trying to access your QNAP web interface, may become very sluggish if you set this to make my CPU hurt, but it will try its best to try and get the conversion done. I would say try not to do transcoding if possible from 4K to 1080p. Other than that, all transcoding, even on something like a dual core Celeron NAS, transcoding from 1080p to 720p will usually be absolutely fine. If you're doing big jumps, so say 1080p down to 360p, it takes a bit more power than dropping just one level to 720p. But yeah, it just depends on your use cases. If you are going to be doing a lot of transcoding, I would definitely recommend getting a NAS with a bit more powerful CPU, ideally one with an onboard GPU into it, something like the TVS-H1288X or the H1688X. Somebody here is asking, what is the best way to find your multimedia folders when looking to set up the libraries? So I covered that a couple of times in the session, but if you want to add libraries, all your libraries, when you add a library on QTS anyway, when you add a different content item and you go to add the folders, on QTS, all your shares that you have access to copy data to and from your NAS are in the cache dev1_data folder. So when you go in there, you will see all the familiar items that you've got, so the shares. So most of these folders here are what you would see when you're looking in FileStation or when you're browsing your NAS over the network. They're going to be the files and shares that you've got access to there. So that's how you would access your media files, cache dev1 data. If you're using QUTS Hero, it's a little different. There'll be a lot of different folders here called ZFS1_data or ZFS2_data. There's no easy way to tell you which one it is. As you create shares, each share that you create gets added in order. So if you create the movies folder, it might be something like ZFS3 data. If you create a separate folder for home videos, after that, it might be ZFS5 data. So you've just got to click the ones until you start seeing the files you recognize. It's just clicking through different folders. Plex will show you what the files are in the folder, and then you select the one which has the actual share in that you've named. So if you've called one home videos, just keep clicking the ZFS data folders till you find it. Usually most people wouldn't have more than about 10 or 15 shares. So you've just got to click on the different ones till you find it. It's just the way QUTS Hero with the ZFS file system creates shares is just a little bit different. Can I add graphics cards to my TVS EC1080 Plus? Any recommendation? If yes, I don't really have a recommendation, but if you go to our website and go to the TVS EC1080 Plus, it will come up and there's a compatibility button that you can push on our website that will have a GPU list if your NAS has supported options. So if we click on the compatibility button there at the top, it will take us to a separate page, and it will auto select hard drives as the first option. But if you change the category here down to GPU, if it was supported, it would be in that list with GPU. So looking at this list, that NAS does not support it. I would say it's because that NAS does not have a big enough power supply to support a graphics card added into the list there. So that's probably why it's not on that list there. It is an older NAS. It is a powerful NAS, one of my favorite older NAS, but it was around before we started doing GPU pass-through, so that's probably why that's not on the list. Somebody here saying, I see SMB, Windows, etc. Not sure what is better. Not sure what that means. We go. Somebody's saying share of cache dev1 data of temp. So I wouldn't do it as a share. I would just browse the native file system. So when you're adding libraries in Plex, you do have the option. So when you say add a film, go to add folders and you're browsing for media, you can type in a path here at the top where the path could be a network path. But then it's going to go across the network effectively to go back into itself. If you just pick it from this list where it's going to do /share. So if I pick the share, for example, and do this download folder, the path is /share /cache dev1 data /download. So this isn't a network path, it's a file system path. Because Plex is running natively in the QNAP, it's just much easier for it to just browse across the file system to find it. Somebody here saying, I store some media on an external storage connected to a NAS and mapped the library to Plex, but there is some time to get media not available. Why? It could be that the external device on the USB maybe went to sleep, so Plex missed it. It asked for a reply from the device to scan for media and it didn't come up. I find connecting USB drives and things like that, it can sometimes be a little patchy on the USB drives just because they have power management features on their USB interface, and you can't override them from anywhere else. So that's why I generally don't like to use USB drives with Plex, just because they seem to go to sleep, and when Plex tries to wake them up, they take too long to wake up and Plex gives up on trying to scan. You can go and scan your media manually if you want to, so I'll show you how to do that. So when you're in the list here, if you see your films, there is an option here to scan library files, so you can tick that and it will go off and do an on-demand scan. So if you know that your USB drive has now woken up but it's missed the automatic scan, you can scan it manually by doing the sort of scan my library directly. Someone's saying here, creating the shares for QNAP for Plex, what access rights do you assign? So the access rights are irrelevant because it's not a network connection. So when you're creating shares, I've just added it as admin, but because the Plex system is running native in the QNAP, as an admin user, it's got access to the share. So when I create my shares for so the movies folder here, for example, I've only got one user added, and that's admin, and they've got read-write permission. So the admin and the administrators group are both added there, just with the standard one. So that's how I keep it, because Plex runs as admin, so I only give an admin. But these are shared folder rights for network access, so it doesn't matter what you set there. Plex has access to all the files in the QNAP. Someone's asking, will the software support a GPU? It is not native there. So if we don't list a GPU, there's not necessarily a reason why it won't work. You know, generally, if one NVIDIA GPU works, most will. Sometimes we don't add GPUs to the list because the power requirements for it might be too high. So something like a GTX 1030 or something will use a lot less power than a 2080, and your NAS might not have the power supply budget left over to power up something more powerful. So a big NAS like our large H1288X, for example, it has a very large CPU. I think it's PSU, sorry, I think it's 550 watt. So it's got a lot of power budget free with the power supply to supply these big graphics cards that need it. Okay, all right, thank you, John, no problem. Somebody else here asking on a separate note, I never managed to get Cinema 28 working. Any hints, please? I'll see if I can get back to you after the session on that, Alistair, as it's not necessarily Plex. I'll cover that later with you. The NVIDIA Shield and QNAP with Plex seem to overlap. So as I say, I use the NVIDIA Shield simply as a player. All I've got installed on there is the Plex Player app. My NVIDIA Shield, I do not have the Plex Media Server running because I've got no storage attached to my NVIDIA Shield, so that's why I don't use it. So you can use the NVIDIA Shield for just playback. It's very powerful. I think it's got 256 GPU cores. So whenever you play content with the NVIDIA Shield, it just plays direct. So as you're opening files, so I want to see if I can illustrate this. So if I start playing, say, the Black Panther, I want to see if I can open up a second browser window. Will it let me do that? So here, if I open up Plex again in another window. So as I'm playing Plex in one screen here, so it's playing down there in the small section down here. So if I click play on that, but if I come across to this screen, I'm going to go to my dashboard this time. So I'll cancel it here. Is it still playing over there? Yes, it is. So that's playing in the background. So now I can see that the Plex is playing. So I can see it here. If I click on it, it will give me a bit more information. Oops, sorry. So it can give you a bit more information on it so that you can see some extra specs. So you can see whether it's a direct stream or not. So if I was to go into this Black Panther playing here, if I go into change the quality settings, so it's playing the original, but if I show all and I convert it down to a lower resolution, when I come back to the management one here, depending on which one it shows on, I don't know which one it's playing because it's trying to play in this browser as well, it will hopefully show you that it's dropped down the transcode, so convert. So hopefully over here it's going to show you that it's converting. So here we're now seeing transcode, and we see that the transcode is happening on this one, and we see HW. So this is using hardware transcoding. So because I've got the GPU in this NAS, there's a little Intel GPU, it's using the onboard GPU to do the transcode. If I come back and check the CPU load of the NAS, it's not registering very high at all because the GPU is doing most of the work to do that file transcode conversion. So that's why I use the transcoding option there. But if you want to go in and inspect, you can come into the dashboard and it shows you whether somebody's doing direct stream. Direct stream takes up absolutely no power from the NAS really. It's just a data transfer that's happening. Plex is just sending the file across to the player. When you're doing transcode, the NAS has to do a conversion before it sends the file across. So that's why it's important to have a powerful enough NAS if you're doing transcodes from very, very high resolutions there. So we can come out of that and close that one down. Okay. Somebody else is asking here, if you have a Shield and Plex Media Server installed, can you use folders from the NAS on the Shield Plex Media Server, or is it only for local stored files in the Shield? Yes, you can. You can set a network path when you add a library. So the network path for the Shield would be something like SMB : / name of NAS or IP of NAS / the path. So you'd have to add your libraries with the network path instead of the local path that it defaults to. Plex and QDVR, will they work on the new QUTS Hero? So yes, you can use QUTS Hero with Plex. If you do have a QUTS Hero NAS, when they first launched for about the first month, Plex Media Server was not listed in the App Center, but it is now. It's completely listed, fully compatible. Even when it wasn't listed as compatible, you could go to the Plex website and download the Q package and just install it manually. It worked absolutely flawlessly. But yes, QUTS Hero does work absolutely great with Plex, no problem at all. So in the example of if you're using the NVIDIA Shield as the Plex Media Server, yes, the Media Server is what's doing the transcoding. So yes, in that example of using storage on the QNAP mounted into the NVIDIA Shield, transcoding would take place wherever the server is installed. Okay, I think I've covered off all the questions there. I will have a browse through them a bit later on as well. I'll download the report, and if there's any that I've missed, I will come back to it, and I'll come back to you directly. And for some of the ones I couldn't answer earlier on in the session, especially about QuMagie, I will get in touch with the product manager and come back to you directly. Okay, right. Thanks a lot for the session, guys. Keep an eye out for a contact from us to see who the winner of the TS251D with the 2 WD8 terabyte drives is as well. Congratulations to whoever wins it. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and see you all in 2021. Thanks.